Hello everyone, this is Vivian, and today I wanted to talk a little bit about fear because fear is obviously very prevalent in our world, in our society. It's always been there, but it's very clear now more than ever that it's really sort of controlling all of our lives. And I mean, so fear is a natural, instinctual state of being that we all have as humans. Animals feel fear too. It's sort of a protective instinct. When we fear something, we're going to stay away from it, or we're not going to do something that makes us fearful, right? So, yes, but also fear, it's just so like overpowering now, where we are almost, I think, addicted to fear. And because it can be addictive in a way, and it triggers all sorts of functions in your body, in your mind, that release all of these chemicals and whatnot. I'm not an expert in that, but I do know that that happens. I'm not gonna go into all of the mechanisms because that's not my area of expertise. But of course it happens, and yeah, it's just fear is being used to virtue signal. It's like whoever now is more fearful, they're actually like a hero, right? I mean, not in my eyes, and probably not in your eyes if whoever's watching this, if you're a viewer of mine, but in general in society, cowardice has now become virtuous. So yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy what's going on. But yeah, I just need a sip of my tea. I have ginger and chamomile and some herbal blend that's good for respiratory health, because my spring pollen allergies have been pretty crazy lately. Yeah, but anyway, being in a fearful state stops us from doing things that we, not only that we should do, but probably things that we actually deep down want to do. But then the fear is preventing us from taking that step, taking that risk. We don't take that risk if we're fearful. And sometimes we might overcome that fear and do what we want to do, what we need to do. But I don't know. I feel like that's becoming more and more of a rarity now. I think it's because people are so comfortable in their comfort zone of so-called safety, of staying safe, that they don't want to take that risk anymore. And so there's a lot of different fears. Of course, the number one is, I guess, for many people, fear of death, ultimately. And then you have all sorts of other things like fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of success even. And ultimately, I'm going to say that every single fear comes down to the fear of death, ultimately. So this is kind of a realization that I had yesterday, and I didn't have time to make a video yesterday. And I didn't even know if I'd make a video today because I have been feeling extremely drained for the past several days. I'm not sure why, because I'm not doing anything differently. I'm getting enough sleep, but who knows? I don't know. It's just this energetic thing. But yes, I actually woke up yesterday thinking about this, that like, I don't know, I was just thinking about fear and like that all of these different fears that people have ultimately come down to fear of death. And I'm going to explain this, why I think this, and you might agree with me, you might not. Maybe this is not news to you, but to me, it's not necessarily that it's news to me, but it's like I just, had this moment and am now like articulating it, if that makes any kind of sense. So, yes, obviously, just the basic fear of death, like what's going on now with the CV, people are afraid that they're going to catch this thing and then they're going to die by getting it, right? They're going to get sick, they're going to die. That's the idea, which of course is not the case. It's, I mean, I'm just gonna go according to the official statistics. It's like an extremely low death rate, extremely high survival rate, if you even want to believe the official statistics, which those are questionable too, of course. But people are just so worried about getting sick, so worried and so afraid of dying that they just have stopped living, essentially. I know that's very clear to all of us, right? Yeah, so it's like life has stopped. Like normal, quote unquote, normal life has stopped for the past year because we have to protect ourselves and be safe at all costs. And we don't want to take the risk of getting sick, even of getting a, we don't want a little cough or a little sniffle. We're afraid of it. Yeah, so we've been taught in our society, at least in the Western world, we've been taught that death is scary, that we should fear death, that it's a very bad thing, that we must avoid it at all costs. And so again, there's that instinct that we have in all of us, the instinct to survive. And so we want to avoid death in that respect. Like, it's just an instinct. But is death really that bad? Because I don't think that anyone knows what happens when we die, like after we die, like what happens, right? And this is more of a spiritual discussion. And I don't think anyone can really answer that with 100% certainty as 100% fact, because yeah, I mean, there have been people who have had near-death experiences who have said certain things. And if you have not had that kind of experience yourself, then you would have to take these people's word for it, for what they saw and experienced in their near-death experiences. And I personally have not had one, so I can't speak to that. But all I'm saying is that nobody knows for sure what happens when we die. And I don't know, it's not, I don't think that we should view it as being as bad as we're taught to view it, right? It's like, when someone dies, it's like, it's tragic, it's terrible. And there are certain deaths where it can be viewed as being a tragedy. For example, when someone young dies, like a child, for example, certainly that is sad and tragic. But we're taught to be sad even when someone who's like 100 years old dies and they've lived a full life and they die, and everyone goes to the funeral and everyone's crying and everything, and like, is it really that bad? And who is it bad and sad for? Is it bad and sad for the person who died, Or is it bad and sad for the people who are left behind by that person, for the people who knew them, the family members, friends, and whatnot? Because I think that's what it is. Because who knows? Maybe that person, their soul, whatever you want to call it, is happy about it. Like they're like, yes, finally I'm out of here. You know, like it's been a long 100 years. You know, so yeah, I mean, I think there's actually some situations where death is not so bad. Not just when someone's 100 years old, but I'm gonna give you an example. So, a friend that I worked with, who was another art model at the school that I model at, he was there from the very beginning. He was there much longer than I was. You know, I started that job like beginning of 2018. He'd been doing it for like a long time before that. He was older than me. So he was diagnosed with like stage 4 cancer back in the fall. Yes, the fall. So I want to say September, because it was right around my birthday that I found this out. So September of 2019. And he was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. And so he was pushed by doctors, and he decided to go the chemotherapy route, which, you know, chemo poison route, really. And that, of course, the chemo did not help matters at all. It made everything worse, and he deteriorated horribly. Like, so he was 51, and he actually passed away in October of last year, October of 2020. So about a year after he was diagnosed, after he started the chemo. And yeah, so he deteriorated just so horribly. At 51 years old, he looked about 40 years older than he was. And he did not look like that before he started, or when he was diagnosed. He did not. He looked like, you know, his age, normal for his biological age. And just, I mean, I have seen actual 91-year-olds who looked more alive and healthier than he did after going through the chemo. And I'm not saying that as like in a mean way at all. I'm saying like just how horrible it is, how he deteriorated under these poisons and under these so-called treatments, which, you know, I can't even get into that. But yeah, so he was suffering a great deal from the chemo and the radiation and everything. And he was in and out of hospitals all the time and seeing doctors. It was just awful. It was really awful. So because he was suffering so much within that year, that last year of his life, it's like once he finally passed, my view of it is that he didn't have to suffer anymore, right? So he was free of that suffering of, you know, that he had to experience in his physical body. And, you know, I want to believe, and I think that, you know, he's doing much better now. His soul, again, you want to call it that, is free now, free from being weighed down by all of the horrible, just the horrible condition of his physical body, in which it was at that point. So yeah, and he was a very funny guy, even when he was sick. So He's probably like, I don't know, his soul's probably out there dancing and having a party somewhere, I'd like to think. And yeah, um, it's just very unfortunate how our culture, and of course, in culture, we have the word cult because culture is a cult to an extent. And we are taught to follow it. But yeah, we're just taught that death is so bad, just like never, you never want to die. You want to be here as long as possible. And yeah, because we don't want to die, we're not even living. I know I'm probably repeating myself, but I mean, that's just really what's happening. And I don't know, just it's crazy because, as we all know, probably most of my viewers on this channel at least understand that the mainstream narrative of like everything that we're taught in our society and culture is completely inverted and just as backwards. So I think that our view of death is also inverted and as backwards in many cases. Yes, and I want to say that the other fears that I mentioned, like the other common fears, like fear of rejection, fear of failure, and even fear of success, are all tied to our fear of death ultimately. And I'm going to explain about that. So this stems back to when we were living as humans in tribal situations and communities, and where we really depended on one another for our survival. So if someone was rejected and ostracized from their community for something that they did, then that would actually most likely greatly affect their survival, their chances of survival in that kind of situation. And so it was instilled in us that we don't want to be rejected, because right now in our current, at least Western world and society, if we're rejected, it usually doesn't directly affect our survival. It's usually just painful in the moment, right? And maybe for a bit afterwards, it stings. It's like, oh my gosh, that person or people or group of people, whatever, rejected me. And like, it just doesn't feel good, usually, right? But it's not affecting our survival, not in our current way of life, right? So, but again, it goes back to, like, in our past, it goes back to being afraid of death, of dying because of being rejected and ostracized. And then, you know, we wouldn't be able to work with other people to procure food and all of that. So yes. And like, I know a lot of people these days fear rejection. And yeah, I mean, I don't like being rejected. It's not like I love being rejected by a person or people, groups of people, by a job or whatever, but it's something that happens. And as an actress, you know, you're rejected all the time. I'm rejected all the time. Like, I audition for something, and so no matter how like nice my audition is, or even like, I judge myself all the time. You know, I'm like, oh God, I don't want to watch this. But like, when I play my audition self-tape back to myself, I'm like, oh my God, don't want to see it, but I watch it anyway because I have to. But even when I think I do a good job and I send it off and I'm like, oh wow, I did my best and I thought I really gave them what they wanted, but I don't know what they want, right? I have no freaking clue what they actually want because I'm not a psychic and I can't read their minds. I mean, there are certain people where I feel like, not that I'm psychic, but like I kind of can read their energy and kind of can finish their sentences, but that's a different story. That's not, and I'm absolutely not claiming to be psychic. And these people that I don't know, have never talked to, that I'm just sending myself tape off to, you know, no idea what they want. I have the character description and then the scene. And so I do my thing and that's that. But I mean, I've been rejected way more times than I've been accepted. That, you know, there are many more times where I don't book the role than I do book the role. Yeah, so if I really was so afraid of rejection and like couldn't handle it, I don't think I'd be able to do that, you know, because that's just how it is. It's not just how it is for me, that's just how it is in that industry and for that particular job. And then there's also people afraid of rejection, like in social situations and in romantic situations where, I mean, I'm just gonna say that I like do not pursue men. I don't ask, I've never asked a guy out because I just don't. If you're a woman watching this and you do that, I think that's fine, but that's just not natural for me. I don't feel like I want to do that. I have my reasons, but you know, in a lot of cases, it's traditional for the guy to ask the girl out if he's interested in her. So I feel like a lot of guys are, especially these days, are so afraid of rejection that they don't even take that step to ask someone out. And again, these days it's more complicated because of the social climate and how some people consider that if someone asks them out that that's sexual harassment, which it's just not. I mean, if you just ask someone out once and you're just, you know, you're being civil about it. It's not like you're being aggressive about it. You nicely ask someone out. That's not harassment. That's just being a normal person. But I digress. So yeah, I mean, if you're a guy watching this and you met some girl somewhere and you really like her and you want to take her out on a date, you want to ask her out, I just say, like, go for it, because, you know, even if she rejects you, what's the worst that can happen? You're not depending on her for your survival. You're not in these days. In our current world, it's just, of course, you might not feel good about it for a bit, but you will live. I guarantee you 100% you have lived without that person before. You will live without that person afterwards, after he or she rejects you. Right? So I think people should go for it and like not be so worried about being rejected. And in social situations too, I mean, I used to have social anxiety. I still kind of do, but I also kind of don't really care anymore about what people think. So like, yeah, I mean, I kind of just I don't know. It's really hard right now to interact with a lot of people because for myself, I feel like I don't have things in common with a lot of people who surround me and who used to be in my social situation. Because you know what, with what's going on with the fear of the bug and the fear, I mean, not the fear, but the lining up to get the shot and, you know, thinking that the shot is life-saving and just the new God, right? So, you know, I'm not really sure what to talk about with those kinds of people. I still respect them as people, but I don't necessarily want to spend my time and energy with them. Again, I'm not trying to be mean about this. This is not me being mean, but this is because as an introvert, my energy gets easily drained from interacting with other people when it's a negative situation or just like an overwhelming situation where, like, even if it is positive, but like, let's say it's a positive situation, but and like I really am vibing really well with everyone, but it's just so many people, a really big event, and then like I will still get drained. So if it's like one-on-one or like just a small group of people and it's very positive, I really don't get drained so much. But yeah, it also depends on the environment. Yes, but anyway, yeah, so just I think when it comes to fear of rejection, like you're not gonna die. You're not gonna die. You will live even if you are rejected. And even if you think it's the end of the world, like it's really not. So it's okay. Just go for whatever it is. And then we have fear of failure. So again, fear of failure, like let's say you failed at some task way back when in the tribal community sort of situation, and then people were like really mad at you and they, you know, that they just that they didn't want you to be part of the community anymore because you failed at this task, at that task, what you know, you were contributing to well, not contributing, but you were taking away from their survival success, I guess. Like you messed up with some crops or something. And yeah, so back then, if you failed, that could again affect your survival directly. But now, in our current situation, if you fail at something, again, it's not going to be the end of the world, even though it might feel like it is. And it might feel like your whole world comes crashing down if you fail something really important. Like, let's say you are a college student and you have this really big exam that, like, your grade for a particular class is really riding on this exam. And so you have to get a good grade. You have to at least pass, because you think that your grade for this class affects your standing at the school, and it affects your what do you call it, your scholarship. And then so you need to have the scholarship money in order to be able to continue to attend the school. And then because you need to attend the school to get your degree, because you think that having your degree then is very important for landing the job or career that you want, that you've been planning on. And because you think that having that job or career is important for your survival in life. So yeah, if you fail that exam, that very important exam, and then you fail that class, you might think that everything is over. And yeah, maybe you might have to take that class again, but it's again not the end of the world. You will live, you will survive. You might even decide to drop out of college, which at this point might not be a bad idea. Personally, I am a college graduate, and sometimes I look back on it, and even though I did well in terms of grades and everything, I look back and I'm like, why did I do this? This was ultimately such a huge waste of time and money. But anyway, because college is considered to be very important in our society, important for your job, whatever, you know, people go on a regular basis. Teenagers go straight out of high school, and there's a lot of problems with that in my opinion. But you know, also another scenario for that is if you fail that exam and then you fail that class, and then you're like, fuck it, I don't want to take that class again, I'm not staying back for another semester, this is bullshit, I am gonna drop out and I'm gonna like start my own business or something. And so that failure, that instance of your failure, is the impetus for your what do you want to call, for your success actually, or the starting point for which you start doing something different that actually in the end brings you more happiness and material success too than it would have been had you stayed in college and gotten that degree. If you maybe if you actually got a good grade on that exam, or if you went back and repeated the class and then took the exam again or whatever. So yeah, failure is not necessarily always a bad thing in our world, because we learn through our mistakes. And you know, failure is a mistake in a way, but again, it's not necessarily bad, because if you learn something from it, and if it can cause you to transform and to transmute things into a positive situation, then is it really a failure? You know, and I hate when people think of themselves and of other people as failures. Like, people say things like, oh, I'm a failure, or people call someone, they say like things like, oh, you're a failure. Like, no, okay, we're not gonna do that. That's really bad language to use, to say that to yourself, to say it to other people. And I personally don't want to hear things like that. I've been there where I've said it towards myself at times, where I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm a failure for multiple reasons. But yeah, it's not helpful in any way, shape, or form to dwell on that. And again, you are not going to die by failing generally. So another very common fear that I want to get into is the fear of success, which is actually a real fear. It might not seem obvious, and a lot of people, I think, want to deny that this is a fear, because it's like success, the idea is like, oh, success, we want it at all costs, we want success. But the reason why sometimes people do fear success is because success can lead to change. And so even if it's a positive change, a change is still a change. And change can cause a lot of things to happen. You know what I mean? Like, you might have to change your ways, right? You might have to perhaps move somewhere else. You might have to interact with different people. You might have to even change your schedule or something. Something different's going to happen when you start getting success. And I'm talking right now about material success. So, because that's the common one. That's just how it is in the world, where the material world is important because we live in it. And of course, it's not the only thing, but a lot of people place the utmost importance on it. So that's why I wanted to talk about that. And so, like, for me, let's say that I really wanted something, right? Like, I want, like, this isn't what I actually want, but I'm just gonna say, like, let's pretend that I want to be a successful, famous Hollywood actress, like in all of these A-list movies. And so let's say that one day I audition for something, and like it's a small role, but then the producer and director, they see me and they're like, oh wow, well she's auditioning for this small like guest star role or supporting role, and but really we think she'd be great for this big lead role in this big project. And you know, that's usually not how it works, by the way, just saying. But if that happened and I'd be like, oh my God, you know, I would be, for me, like I would be taken aback by that because like, even though that would be, I guess, exciting, sort of, it would also be actually quite scary because that would lead to a bunch of major life changes that I might not be comfortable with. One being that if I was a famous person or celebrity, that, you know, the paparazzi would follow me, I'd be like in the tabloids or something, everyone would know my business all the time, or at least want to. I wouldn't be able to go wherever I wanted, you know, like without people recognizing me. So that would be scary to me. So then I might resist that. I might outwardly be like, oh yeah, sure, I'd love to audition for that role. But then like I might actually not even give the best performance in my audition for that because of that subconscious or underlying fear that, you know, that, oh my gosh, everything would change for me. And I don't know if I'm comfortable with that, because change can certainly be uncomfortable even when it is positive. And again, no one's gonna die from success. There are certain changes that could lead to actual physical death, but that's, you know, things change in life, and that's a constant. Change is a constant. And also death is ultimately where we're all going. Like, I'm literally dying right now. I know it sounds harsh, but you're also literally dying right now as we speak, as you're sitting here watching this, as I'm sitting here talking, because that's just the one guarantee in life, is that we're all gonna die. So I personally don't think that we should be so afraid of it and so just constantly in this state of fear over death, because it's not helping us, because we're here right now to live life. We're not here to be in a state of fear. Okay, so yes, I need my tea for a second. I've been talking more than I should again. I didn't intend for this to be a long video, but it is longer than I had thought it would be. But yeah, I mean, that is definitely what I wanted to say today. And also I want to talk about some of my own fears. Like, I am not without fear, right? Like, do I fear rejection? I don't want to say that I necessarily fear it anymore. Like, I definitely used to much more than I do now, but certainly it's not pleasant to me always. But I've kind of gotten more used to it, that I'm just like, whatever, again, like, it's fine. It's not the end of the world. But I'm just going to touch on some of my like fears that I do have, which, let me think. So, fear of heights. I certainly have a fear of heights. And I'm not about to go skydiving anytime soon, or ever, maybe, I don't know. So that's definitely a real fear for me. And again, the fear of heights, why is that? Ultimately because of fear of death, because I do at least subconsciously, fear that I am going to die some horrific death while doing that. Like, honestly, my mind just goes to all these scary places while imagining myself skydiving. So, yes, that's certainly a fear that I would have to overcome. Another fear of mine is singing in public. So on my previous video where I talked about one of the things that I brought up in the video was that I'm open to collaborating with other people, perhaps people who write, and you know, if they would like for me to perform their piece that they wrote. And so collaborating creatively in that way. And someone asked me if I also sing. And I said, no, I act and I dance and I also write, which isn't performance, but anyway, and yes, I don't sing because I don't want people's ears to bleed. That's how I answered the comment, I believe. And so really, like, I have a fear of singing in public because it makes me feel very self-conscious. And I'm not comfortable with it. I feel like people would judge me. They'd be like, oh my God, her singing is horrible. Like, what is she even thinking by singing? She can't sing. And so I haven't ever really tried to sing for real in front of people. I do sing when I'm at home, alone sometimes in the shower. The typical sort of thing like that, but not in front of people. So that would have to be a fear that I would have to overcome. And I actually used to be afraid of performing in front of people, like just acting in front of people and also dancing in front of people. I got over my fear of just performing, like acting in front of people earlier. Then I got over my fear of dancing in front of people, but my fear of dancing in front of people was very real, like in social situations and like just, I was very afraid of dancing in front of people again because fear of rejection and like people thinking that I'm just like, you know, like what is she doing type of thing, she can't dance. Why is she even trying, like things like that would go through my mind. And so I was very shy about that. But then like several years ago I finally broke through that and I started actually dancing in public, like on stage, not even just in social situations. So who knows? All things are possible. We can overcome all fears, is basically what I'm saying. So hopefully that will be some motivation for some people. And you know, a lot of people have a fear of being vulnerable and in front of others. And to an extent, singing and dancing is being vulnerable in a way in front of others, particularly singing, I think, for me. So maybe I'm not comfortable with that. I'm definitely more comfortable being vulnerable in front of others, also much more than I used to be. But that's definitely a real fear, I think, for a lot of people. I think especially for men in our society and culture, they really don't want to be vulnerable in front of people because they don't want to come off as being sensitive, I think. And like, you know, in our culture, it's like it promoted this idea that you have to be a macho man at all times. You can never cry. You can never shed a single tear. So I can't relate directly to that, of course, since I am a woman, but I've seen it happen and I've seen men talk about this and it's upsetting to me. And I think that vulnerability should be encouraged. Now, again, vulnerability is not the same thing as femininity. So being vulnerable as a man does not automatically make you feminine. It does not make you a soy boy if you are vulnerable or anything like that. Or even if you get emotional and cry and show some sensitivity, it just doesn't. But yeah, so that's just my thoughts on that. But oh my gosh, it's getting really hot in here for some reason. I don't know why. The air conditioning is working, but I don't know. It's like, it might be because of the light. I'm not sure, but I do have this shiny fan that I fan myself with sometimes. Yeah, I actually got it at Party City a few years ago. So, People think that it's like some really fancy thing, but it's not that fancy. Maybe it just looks that way. So yeah, it really works. It works really well. So I don't think this should be surprising to anyone that I just pulled out a fan like that. I mean, you've seen my videos, or if you have seen them, you understand, like, I can be pretty over the top. So at least in terms of my style, my aesthetic sensibility is certainly. But yeah, that is what I wanted to say today. And before I go, I'm going to read my tea quotes that I have today. Do all of them have quotes? Okay, yes. Oh my gosh, all 4 of my tea bags have quotes today. So let's see. This first one here says, "Let your need be to help those in need." And so yeah, we should all absolutely help one another and try to raise one another up. And it's very hard to do that if you are in a state of fear. Because also fear can be contagious. And like you can see this a lot with parents and young children, where like the child is more carefree. If it's a very young child, they're more carefree. They don't really have as many fears and anxieties yet. But let's say that their mom or dad does, and they're worried, and they they sort of project their fear onto the kid, and so the kid will start to sort of take on that fear as well. I've seen it happen. It has happened to me, by the way. I remember when I was little too, when I was a child, because my parents worried about me and they were like overprotective. It also happens with people and their pets. Like, I've seen a dog or a cat take on their owner's sort of personality traits and also their anxieties and fear. Like, let's say the owner doesn't like you. Like, let's say you're at their house, right? You're at this dog or cat owner's house, and they really don't like you. You're just there for whatever reason, but maybe you're frenemies or something. And yeah, and so their dog or cat then will also not like you when the owner doesn't like you. So I have seen this happen. So yeah, and then just for me, because I'm sensitive to other people's energies, even though I'm not a child anymore, obviously I'm an adult, but this happened to me when I lived in New York City, where I would go on the subway or go on around in these crowded areas, these crowded streets, and I would leave my apartment feeling totally fine, feeling good. And then when I was in the subway or whatever, I would take on these other people's negative emotions, like perhaps their fear, their anger, things like that, because like I could just feel it. So we don't want to spread our fear to others. And we can help them in that way too, just by not being in a fearful state. I think that could be helpful to people. So what does this say? Okay, this other one here says, "Travel in grace, knowing that you are protected by love." So that's a good thing to keep in mind, a good thing to tell yourself if you are feeling in a state of fear and you want to feel safe. Just imagine that you're just surrounded by this bubble of love. I don't know how else to put it. Just, I'm not trying to sound like a hippie right now, but like, just imagine that you are, because this is real. Like, imagine so your heart obviously is right here. So imagine from your heart center that this love is projecting out all around you in this circle, and it's projecting all around into your environment and affecting other people in a positive way. And so I think that's just a good way of feeling good and perhaps safe, if you can ever really feel safe. I don't like the word safe and safety, but I'm sure you get the idea. So what else do we have here? What other quotes? This says, without the darkness, you would never know the light. And that's true. That is true. So, for example, failure, rejection, those things are seen as negative and dark things. But then if we didn't have that, how would you know what it means and feels like to be accepted and to succeed? You wouldn't know, right? So you need that. And also death is, I guess, seen as the ultimate darkness. And there would be no life without death. We need to have death in order to have life, at least how it exists here in our current plane of existence. That is how it is. So, and things get recycled back into life. If we didn't bury people and cremate people when they died, if we let people back into the ground, into the soil without any coffins or anything, like, I'm not trying to be morbid, I promise, but I'm just being real. Really, if we did this, just how like when animals die out in nature, like if we did this with people too, then they would give life back to the soil, to the earth, the plants, trees, flowers would grow from that. And, of course we don't do that, generally speaking, we don't do that now. But that's really it is. That's the cycle of life. So yeah, let me see. What else? There's one more quote. Oh my gosh, where did it go? Okay, here it is. So this one says, from a small seed, a mighty trunk may grow. Okay, that's a good one too, because we all have to start somewhere with something, with anything. We have to start small. Like, we're not gonna, like, for example, if your goal is success, then you can't expect any kind of success like overnight, even if it's not material success. Like, let's say you have some kind of spiritual or mental goal that you want to achieve, and you would consider that to be a success for yourself. So again, like, it's not going to happen overnight. You have to work at it. You have to start small. For example, if you want to start meditating, but you've never meditated before, and you want to actually really do it and become good at it, and good at it just for yourself. It's not like anyone's gonna be sitting there judging your meditation, but just for you, right? And so when you first start, you're gonna have to block out all of these voices in your head, all of these things that you have to do. You have to do this, you have to do that. You're like, why are you might even think why am I wasting time right now meditating? I have to be working on something else right now, because a lot of people don't think of meditation as work, and it shouldn't be like work, but at first it might feel that way. So you're gonna have to start quieting your mind at first. That you're gonna have to begin like that. And that's like a small step. You're gonna just to be able to sit there in stillness, in the quiet. I guess you could do guided meditations too. And again, for that, if you want to do a guided meditation, then you have to also quiet the part of your mind that is telling you stuff that's not related to the guidance that you're receiving. So yes, and so you will find with time, because this is what I found when I started meditating. At first it was this is just natural, for everyone. It's hard at first, because a lot of people just don't do this in our modern world, where you just sit there and you don't necessarily think about anything. You sit there, you're calm, you're peaceful, you're still, quiet, everything. And yeah, so you do have to start small even for things like that. And if you want to start a business or something, your business is not going to happen overnight either. Like you have to start planting those seeds, and it's going to eventually grow over time, just like a tree, right? Yeah, I like that analogy of the trunk, the seed, the trunk, the tree. So yes, I have said what I wanted to say today, and I hope you enjoyed that. Thank you for watching, and you will see me next time.